12 spine-chilling Starbucks encounters. Terrifying stories unveiled. Cursed secrets discovered. Claire sat in her favorite corner of the Maplewood Starbucks, her pulse quickening at the strange vibe surrounding her. The usual comforting scent of coffee felt heavy tonight, weighed down by an unsettling energy. That familiar barista, the one who always greeted her with a warm smile, was nowhere to be found. Instead, a newcomer with twitchy hands grinned wide but didn't meet her eyes. Her heart raced, dread creeping up her spine like a chill wind. A low rumble of laughter from her kids, immersed in a game nearby, anchored her momentarily. Yet, as she stole glances around the cafe, the anxiety returned. The man in the corner, his smile was too widespread, unsettlingly unchanging. He watched her, his gaze piercing like icicles. Claire shook her head, convincing herself the unease was a figment of her overactive imagination. Just nerves from a long night shift ahead. But dread twisted deeper in her stomach as the days rolled on. Each night, more familiar faces disappeared from the cafe, replaced by staff that felt off awkward, cold. Whispers floated at school drop-offs like sickly sweet smoke. A curse, they said. A tale of tragedy haunting the Starbucks, a beloved barista lost to fate. They laughed at her concern, the parents speaking lightheartedly about it, dismissing her feelings as superstition. But Claire's chest tightened with every visit, every encounter. With each sip, she could taste something darker mingling with her beloved caramel macchiato. It was after yet another late night at the hospital that Claire found herself inexplicably drawn to the local archives. Old newspaper articles echoed stories from her town's dismal past, tales of a tragedy that unfolded within those Starbucks walls. She stumbled upon a photo, her heart stalling as she recognized a friendly face. The very barista who used to serve her. The articles spoke of loss, whispers of misfortune that seemed to wrap around the cafe like a suffocating veil. As she pieced together the narrative, panic seeped in. The man she saw, his interest in her seemed protective, but was it? Or was it more sinister? The air thickened with tension, shadows dancing in the corners of her mind like wraiths warning her of something she couldn't name. Each night after work felt heavy-laden, her heart racing until she convinced herself those trouble-filled stories were just dilapidated lies covered in dust. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With every visit to that cursed cafe, the grasp of anxiety tightened, like a noose freshly knotted. Claire's thoughts spiraled. What if the locals were right? What if she was unearthing a family history tied to that dark legacy? Her stomach churned at the idea as she stood outside, staring into the glow of the Starbucks sign flickering in defiance, shadows lurking just beyond its warmth. The following night, just after dropping her kids off with their father, Claire glanced towards the cafe. The man's eyes caught hers, a glint of something buried deep. A question echoed in her mind: what had she stumbled into? She shivered against the late-night chill, an inexplicable sense of dread draping over her like a tattered blanket, every instinct screaming at her to turn back. But was it too late? As she stepped away, the hairs on her neck prickled. What if she had already become part of its cursed story? Would the whispers of Maplewood soon call her name? What awaited her within those walls, ready to seal her fate forever? The next evening, Claire could hardly focus on her tasks. The buzz of medical equipment filled her ears at the hospital, but her mind was with the cafe, that dark store where whispers slithered like smoke between the cracks. It gnawed at her, the blend of horror and curiosity pulling her back towards the unknown. After her shift, the world outside felt distorted. She stepped into the cold air, a shiver wrestling its way up her spine. Despite the hospitals and the safe spaces she'd worked in, a suffocating sense of dread settled in her chest as she made her way toward Maplewood Starbucks. Every step was heavy, like drums echoing through her bones. As she pushed the door open, an unsettling chime rang like a warning. The sight welcomed her, a dimly lit interior, tables empty but for the flickering light and the unsettling man in the corner, whose gaze immediately snagged on her. His smile widened, stretching too far, like it belonged on a mask rather than a living face. Her heart thundered, echoing in her ears. Claire could taste panic at the back of her throat. She walked toward the counter, where a woman with hollow cheeks and lifeless eyes studied her as if deciding whether she was worthy of service. Claire ordered a drink, but all the warmth she sought slipped away with every interaction. The usual caffeinated aromas had morphed into something sickly, mingling with the scent of something rotten. As she waited, Claire glanced at a table where a pair of young art students were sketching. They looked up with fleeting expressions of horror, their eyes reflecting a fear she couldn't fully understand but felt all too keenly. They quickly looked away, murmuring in strained whispers. "Just a coffee," Claire muttered, her voice barely audible, lost in the weighted silence. Just as she turned to leave with her drink, a frigid rush swept through the cafe, snuffing out the wretched warmth of familiarity. Suddenly, the lights flickered, revealing flashes of distorted faces in the reflections, deeply contorted, mouths curved in silent screams. She stumbled back, her drink splattering across the floor. "No, no!" Claire cried, heart racing as her vision blurred. She blinked, trying to steady her breath, but the sight around her warped into a palette of shadows. The man in the corner did not move, yet his presence felt suffocating. Wait, was he somehow closer? A pulse of panic surged through her limbs. Memories of the newspaper articles clouded her thoughts, stories of disappearances, victimized souls haunting the very space she stood in, claiming those who dared to question their fate or worse, those who came in search of answers. Claire whipped around, ready to flee, but as she reached for the handle, the door slammed shut with a force that rattled her bones. The barista, now more spectre than human, smiled behind the counter, eyes glinting with malice as a low hum reverberated in the air, a dissonance like a lullaby urging her to stay. A thought screamed through her mind: she had walked into a trap. The whispers were not merely echoes of the past. They were alive, spilling into the present, reaching for her. Heart racing, Claire scanned the cafe, searching for an escape, but the walls felt as if they were closing in, edges blurring like lines between reality and nightmare. "Help me," she gasped, her voice trembling, before the shadows leaped forward, absorbing her pleas, concealing her within their restless clutches. What was she willing to sacrifice to escape from the truth? As she frantically looked around, the man's icy stare met hers, harboring secrets of his own. This was no ordinary cafe. The unbearable weight of their shared existence here thickened, and in that moment, the question loomed larger than ever: what did he want from her? As the silence deepened like an unending abyss, a whimper escaped Claire's lips. Everything began to spiral, and she felt herself teetering on the edge of something unfathomably dark. Would any of them survive the night? Would she be another lost soul lingering forever? Her breath quickened, the air thick with the tension she could almost taste. The man's grin seemed to grow, pulling tighter across his face, while the shadows crept closer, their darkness devouring the remnants of light. Claire's heart raced wildly, each beat a drum calling her to action. She needed to break free. "Stay with us," the barista crooned softly, her voice warped like a record stuck on repeat, laced with an unholy sweetness. No, Claire shook her head, backing away. The walls pulsed with an unnatural rhythm, the cold tiles beneath her feet seeming to ripple in response to her escalating panic. "Help!" she cried out again, the desperation piercing the heavy silence. It felt as if the cafe itself was breathing, in and out, wrapping around her like a predator preparing to strike. But no sound came from the art student's only wide, terrified eyes that mirrored her own horror. The flickering lights plunged the entire room into a disorienting dance of light and shadow. One moment she could see the stunned expressions of her fellow patrons, and the next, their faces appeared completely twisted, mouths gaping in mute horror. Every heartbeat counted down to something unimaginable. Then, the man in the corner began to rise. He moved with unsettling grace, gliding across the floor without lifting his feet. Claire's instinct screamed at her to move, to run. But when she tried to pivot, the shadows tightened their grasp, holding her still. It was as if all the air had been sucked from the room, leaving only dread in its wake. "What do you want?" Claire shouted, her voice barely breaking through the weight of the atmosphere. That question hung in the air, pregnant with fear and uncertainty. The man stopped just a few feet away, his eyes black pools devoid of life. "To show you," he replied, and his voice echoed, filling her mind with a dark, magnetic energy. No, this was happening. Before she could think, he reached out, his fingers brushing against her arm like ice. Sparks of fear coursed through her body, and an image flooded her mind, a vision of terror from the past, a young woman sitting in this very cafe, eyes wide with horror, screams trapped inside her throat as shadows swallowed her whole. "Stop!" Claire gasped, wrenching her arm away, shaking her head, desperate to block the intrusion. But the vision clung to her, the suffocating weight of its truth paralyzing her. Each plea to escape only intensified its hold. The shadows thickened around her, morphing into grotesque shapes, whispers rising into a chaotic chorus. Join us, the chant rolled over her like waves crashing against jagged rocks. She could feel the draw, an irresistible pull toward the depths of despair. But with every ounce of her will, she fought against it. "Stay awake, Claire!" she told herself, her mind racing, her body screaming for a release. She could still remember the exits, the smell of fresh coffee, ordinary things that felt light years away. Suddenly, the door rattled, a loud bang echoing through the ruined silence. She whipped toward it, hope igniting like a spark. A group of old patrons pounded against the glass, their faces horrified and pleading, desperate to escape just as she was. For an instant, the shadows hesitated, and Claire seized her chance. She lunged for the door, adrenaline pulsing through her veins. But just as her fingers brushed the handle, every light in the cafe surged into blinding brilliance. The moment of clarity shattered as the burst revealed the true nature of her surroundings. They were all the lost souls of the cafe. Faces twisted in torment, trapped in an eternal loop of despair. "Claire, you're one of us now," the voices echoed, chilling her to the marrow. A bone-deep dread gripped her heart. Instinct told her to escape, but dread whispered of the truth. What darkness had she truly stumbled into? As she stood frozen between the door and the swirling shadows, she knew she had to choose: run or delve deeper into the horror begging to be unlocked. And in that single, critical moment, Claire realized that whatever fate awaited her was just beginning to unfold. The light flickered again, illuminating faces marked by suffering, a surreal gallery of despair. Claire's heart thundered in her chest, drowning out their whispers, but panic clawed at her throat. Each unfamiliar face bore witness to a truth she refused to accept. They were all trapped in this cafe, prisoners of a darkness that thrived on their fear. The barista, eyes glinting with a malevolent joy, stepped nearer. "You can't leave, Claire. Not now. You're part of this." The shadows undulated around her, breathing. The air turned frigid, as if winter had rushed in through the door she could not open. She stumbled back, her mind racing. "What do you mean? I'm not like you." But dread pooled in her stomach, and she could feel the shadows tightening their grip, daring her to deny their invitation. "Feel the truth," the barista continued, her voice sweet yet sinister. "The cafe remembers every scream, every tear. You are drawn to it just as they are." A scrape rang through the cafe, pulling her attention away from the barista. One of the patrons, a man with hollow cheeks and wild eyes, stood up, pointing toward Claire. "You're the next? You'll know." But before he could finish, the shadows burst forth, swallowing his words in angry growls. She turned instinctively, seeking an escape, but every pathway felt blocked, like an invisible wall pushing her toward the depths of darkness. Each flicker of lights painted the cafe in a grotesque pantomime of horror. The faces twisted further, their mouths opening, a cacophony of muted screams crashing over her. "Join us, Claire!" they cried, voices overlapping, becoming a single sound of despair. Panic gripped her even tighter. She caught glimpses of hands reaching out, pleading for help, but the sorrow in their eyes warned her that reaching back would only lead to her demise. She couldn't stay here. Gritting her teeth, she scanned the cafe for anything that could break the dark spell. The door, still closed, shimmered with an odd light, inviting yet foreboding. It whispered promises of freedom. "Claire, what will you choose?" The soft, cooing voice of the barista struck a nerve in an attempt to lure her back. She turned her head sharply, confronting her captor. "I want to join you." And then, with roaring courage, she plunged toward the door once more. Her fingers grazed the cool metal handle, and with desperation fueling her movements, she gripped it and twisted. Nothing. A cold shimmer pulsed through the air, vibrating through her body like an electric shock made manifest by the spirits themselves. Her heart sank. It was not a simple lock that prevented her from escaping. It was a barrier forged by their grief, a web of despair that entrapped her as surely as it had trapped so many others. "We are here for you, Claire!" The shadows surged, coming alive. The cafe shuddered, the walls seeming to close in. She felt it again, that heavy weight of dread pressing down, though she fought fiercely against it. "Let me go!" she screamed, her voice a raw whisper against the chaotic roar. The barista stepped closer, her eyes dark and fathomless. "You can't escape your destiny." "Embrace it," something within Claire snapped. She lashed out, desperate to break the cycle of horror. "Get away from me!" In that instant, the shadows drew back as if struck by her defiance. Claire felt a strange warmth around her, just a flicker of light in the encompassing darkness. It emboldened her an impulse to push deeper into the shadows rather than retreat. Outside, the pounding on the glass window grew frantic. "Claire, don't let it take you. You have to fight." The words cut through the chaos, grounding her just enough. But could she truly fight this? What if confronting the darkness only led her to greater horrors? Before she could process, the cafe erupted into a hurricane of sound. With one last look at the tortured souls, panic and resolve intertwining in her chest, Claire took a deep breath and lunged deeper into the pulsating shadows. The moment she crossed the threshold, everything went dark, but she could still hear the whispers. What horrors awaited her in that suffocating embrace? And could she find a way to untangle herself before it was too late? The darkness wrapped around Claire like a heavy blanket, smothering her senses. She stumbled forward, unsure of where she was going. The whispers swirled around her, low, guttural sounds that reverberated in her skull. They taunted her with snippets of anguished stories, threads of horror woven tightly together. "Every soul bound to this place," a voice muttered, slithering into her ears like ice water. She pressed her palms against her temples, trying to block them out, but the words sank deeper, evoking memories long buried. Flashes of her life sipped through her mind, her brother's voice during a childhood camping trip, the laughter of friends, and the solitude that wrapped around her in the still of the night. And then, she sensed movement. The shadows were not just a formless void. They twisted and turned into shapes, figures emerging like specters from a nightmare, faces consuming the darkness. Their mouths moved, but sound fell away like sand through fingers. Claire could feel their eyes on her, tangible weight pressing against her skin, pulling her in. "Join us," a collective hiss grew louder, echoing the barista's earlier words. "You have the mark. You cannot escape. You belong." Belong? The word twisted in her heart like a knife. She refused to let them claim her. With every ounce of strength, Claire focused on that flickering warmth she had felt earlier. It was still there, a small fire against the all-consuming dark. She pushed against the shadows, determined to find a way through. "Fight, Claire!" The distant voice outside pierced the shadows again, cutting through her fear. Instinctively, she turned towards the sound, seeking the connection she had with the living. "Help me!" she screamed, desperate for a lifeline. The shadows recoiled, the figures shifting uncomfortably as if they feared the strength of her call. For a moment, Claire felt a sliver of triumph. Perhaps she could break the chain binding her. Adrenaline surged through her as if igniting that small warmth into a blaze. She took a step forward, then another. With every stride, light flickered at the fringes, illuminating sunbeams cutting through the fog of despair. But the shadows lunged forward, hands grasping at her ankles, icy fingers grazing her skin. They pulled her back, a grotesque dance of power, reminding her of her own fear. Panic clawed at her throat once more, but she fought hard against it. No! Let me go! Stay with us. You're not alone. Their cries became chants, a fearful glory of despair surrounding her. Faces filled with sorrow twisted even further, reaching out desperately, begging for solace. Suddenly, the barista appeared at the edge of the cluster, her smile sharp and jagged like shattered glass. You cannot win, Claire. They need you as much as you need them. Embrace the truth. Truth? Claire echoed, anger bubbling in her chest. This isn't truth. You just want to feed on our fear. With that declaration, her light flared brighter. The shadows screeched, echoing their terror back at her. It was as if her defiance was the spark that lit a fuse. They began retreating, cracks formed in their endless dark facade, revealing glimpses of what lay beyond tiny shards of normalcy, light piercing through the cracks. Could she reach it? The thought filled her with conviction. The cafe faded around her, the faces of despair warping and writhing as she pushed closer to the light. Claire, a new voice, tender and familiar, called to her from that glimmer, her brother, vivid and warm. She lunged toward the glow, but a dark tendril lashed out, wrapping tightly around her wrist. Claire felt a rush of icy dread flooding her body. The cafe began to tremble, the walls contorting in agony. Join us, Claire. The countless whispers became a chilling wind, beckoning her back into the abyss. She could feel their hold tightening like a noose, but her brother's voice fought back, fierce and clear. Don't look back. As she strained against the darkness, reality felt almost tethered to the shadows. Would she slip away into the void, or could she break free? With a surge of desperate energy, Claire cried out, "Let me go!" The darkness around her roared back, a tempest of despair. But at that moment, just as everything trembled and warped, she felt something shift within her, a tiny spark of hope igniting against the cold. Would it be enough to break free and finally discover what lay beyond, or was she plunging deeper into the shadows' embrace? The grip of the shadows tightened mercilessly, slipping over her skin like icy venom. Claire felt her strength waning, the flicker of hope waning against the relentless tide of despair. They were pulling her back, deeper into the chilling embrace of something far worse than mere darkness. The whispers surged around her, rising in a dreadful crescendo. Come back, Claire! You must claim your place. The barista's voice cut through the chaos, razor-sharp and insistent. You can't fight fate. Fate? The word echoed in her mind like a death knell. What kind of fate awaited her here? The shadows tightened their grasp, drawing her further into their web. She twisted against the tendril cutting into her wrist, but every move only seemed to excite the dark figures surrounding her. Their faces were contorted masks of yearning and malice, eyes wide with hunger and longing. Help me! She pleaded, her voice trembling, the light flickering in the distance becoming faint. I don't want to join you. But they didn't release her. Instead, they heaved her towards the center of their circle, closing in like wolves on a wounded deer. Despair clawed at her throat. Every instinct screamed at her to fight, to escape. Face your truths, Claire. You're one of us, they chorused. But that flicker of warmth within her, a cherished memory of laughter and love, flared against the suffocating darkness. With a desperate thrust of will, she focused on her brother's voice. Claire, I'm still here. She locked onto that sound, allowing it to guide her, to find the light through the shadows. The cafe around her rumbled as if the very foundation quaked with her resolve. She planted her feet, refusing to budge another inch into the abyss. No! She cried, the fiery warmth growing as bright as noon's sun. I will not give in! A blinding flash erupted from her core, like an explosion of sunlight that sent the shadows screeching backward. They recoiled as she fought against the darkness that sought to drag her away. The walls of the cafe shuddered, more cracks splintered through the blackness, revealing glimpses of reality beyond. Keep going! Her brother encouraged, his voice now ringing clear, like a bell cutting through the fog. You're stronger than they think. Fueled by hope and determination, she lunged forward. The light enveloped her. For a heartbeat, she felt weightless, a sensation of fleeing the very grasp of despair. But then, the cafe quaked violently, and a fresh wave of shadows erupted from the cracks in the walls. They surged towards her, a monstrous tide, their screams melding into a symphony of agony. "Not yet, Claire!" The barista hissed through clenched teeth, the regret and rage coiling around her like a serpent. "You can't escape your destiny." Her heart raced, pumping terror through her veins. She could feel the cold tears of the shadows on her skin, an icy caress that promised nothing but despair. Just as she felt she might be dragged back, she caught sight of something, an echo of her own reflection bouncing back from the walls, the girl she used to be, unbroken and free. "Time to let go," she whispered to herself, determination coursing through her like lava. The shadows closed in, but she took a deep breath, using the last of her light to push against them. The space around her flickered and vaporized, the cafe threatening to implode under their pressure. But she was done being claimed. One last push. One last cry. "I choose my own fate." With that declaration, the shadows faltered. It was as though her words were a barrier that held them at bay, starting to bend the rules of the darkness itself. The light coiled around her, radiant and fierce, forcing away the dark specters. But then, an ear-piercing roar erupted, an explosion of rage and despair as a dark figure emerged, a hulking silhouette, its features obscured, fury igniting the void around it. "Flee? You dare challenge the darkness?" Claire's heart thundered as the figure loomed closer. It reached for her, fingers stretching like claws towards her throat. Had she awakened something worse? The shadows around her writhed with anticipation, hungry for a feast of fear. Would she be able to hold on to her light, or would this darkness consume her whole? "This is just the beginning," Claire, the voice inside the maelstrom, echoed ominously, promising no end, but only a far more dangerous game. The figure's fingers grazed Claire's throat, almost feather-light, but undeniably menacing. A cold shiver shot down her spine, her heart racing in terror, because it wasn't just dark, it felt alive, pulsating with an insatiable hunger. "No!" she shouted, more defiantly this time. The remnants of her light flared fiercely, the glow intensifying around her, pushing against the void that loomed before her. But those engulfing shadows retaliated, darkness swirling like smoke and wrapping around her limbs, pulling her backward. It felt as if the very essence of fear was materializing, squeezing the air from her lungs. "Can you feel it?" the barista hissed, a sadistic edge creeping into her voice. "The weight of your own darkness? We are all fragments of the same fate, Claire." In her mind, memories swirled. Recollections of encounters at this very cafe, laughter shared over steaming cups. Meeting her brother after school. The way the warm sunlight kissed her face, modern, innocent moments of peace. Yet with each cherished memory, the looming shadows threatened to drown them, draping them in cold despair. "No! I want to be part of this!" she yelled, fighting to reclaim her own narrative. Her resolve ignited and the light within her surged again. "I choose who I am." As if responding to her defiance, the monstrous silhouette recoiled for a moment, shadows writhing like snakes in retreat. A brief flicker of hope ignited within her, but that spark was quickly smothered when the figure loomed closer, revealing a chaotic swirl of agony in its eyes. Whispers erupted anew, intoxicating and disorienting. "Join us, Claire." In that dizzying moment, she felt the pull of something familiar, the scent of coffee, warm and inviting, mingling with the bitterness of despair. Her disorientation sharpened her focus. Claire fought through the onslaught of noise, pushing her thoughts above the cacophony. But glancing back, she saw the barista's face contorting with unholy joy. "Let it take you!" the barista screamed as she seemed to become both part of the shadows and a puppet of their will. "You cannot escape what you were born to be." The cafe around them trembled, books falling from the shelves and light fixtures swaying dangerously. The shadows whispered recklessly through the cracks. It was a battle between her past and her own revelation, a choice burning bright amidst a brewing storm. She inhaled sharply, filling her lungs with all the warmth that had once been. "I remember love. I remember joy." Her declaration surged forth, echoing like lightning. The light around her pulsed and flickered, battling against the tide of darkness, creating waves of light that pushed back against the shadows. But then the silhouette lunged forward, claws swatted wildly at her, narrowly missing. Her pulse raced, fear surged up through her chest. She had to finish this or die trying. She felt the warmth underground deep in her being. "Face me!" Claire yelled, eyes locked onto the looming shadow. "Face what you fear!" As her words resonated through the air, something inside the figure faltered. For a moment, the disarray in its form quivered, revealing flickers of doubt. The shadows hesitated, a crack appearing between them, a small space where light dared inch through. "Your choice means nothing!" it roared, slashing at the barrier of light. A pulse of energy erupted, temporarily weakening the figure's grip. Claire felt hope bloom again. But she knew this was a transient moment. The shadows still writhed hungrily, daring her to fall back to join them willingly. "Stand firm, Claire!" her brother's voice urged, echoing through the chaos. "Fight for who you are!" With every ounce of her strength, she pushed back against the malevolent force. "I am not afraid!" she shouted. But even as she did, the heart of the darkness surged forward, as if sensing her fragile resolve, ready to launch one last, devastating attack. In that instant, another voice broke through, clearer than before. "You must choose, Claire. The light or the dark." Had she awakened her own torment? Time hung in suspension, with Claire holding on to the last tethers of hope. A battle raged within her, the shadows stirring impatiently. Would she embrace the light? Or would she be devoured by the dark calling for her, beckoning her to take her rightful place? A clock began to tick in the depths, rhythmic and ominous. What would she decide when the moment came? The shadows surged once more, a howling wave of desperation that reached for Claire's very soul. She felt it claw at her skin, tugging at her senses, swirling doubt and dread around her like a cyclone. The cafe's familiar ambience twisted into something grotesque, the once inviting scent of coffee now putrid, mingling with the metallic tang of fear. "Choose!" the voice screamed again, its intensity shaking her to the core. "Join us, Claire! You will never escape!" As the words echoed, memories flickered in her mind, fragments of her life that seemed to teeter dangerously on the edge of oblivion. Her brother's laugh, a soft touch on her shoulder during tough times, were they all lies? She clenched her fists, feeling nails biting into her palms, grounding herself in the physical world. No matter the tempest, she would not let the darkness rewrite her story. With a fierce scream, she pushed against the encroaching gloom. "I am not yours!" The energy that expelled from her felt like a nuclear explosion, a brilliant light that blinded the figure momentarily. The shadows recoiled as if physically struck, lingering tendrils dissipating into mist, giving her a momentary breath of freedom. Yet just as quickly, the figure reformed, each shadow clawing its way back together, accumulating rage and even more hunger. Underneath its skin, the shifting abyss spoke with 1,000 voices. "You cannot resist forever. Darkness is your destiny." Claire shook her head furiously, fighting against the words that tried to burrow into her mind. "No! I decide who I am." Her voice was an army, leading her resolve back to her heart. Taking a step forward, she felt her brother's presence inside her, sturdy, unyielding. It fueled the fire within her, blazing light brighter than ever before. "You're wrong!" she yelled into the darkness, every ounce of conviction pouring from her. "I will fight." But as she stepped into that uncertain space between light and dark, a rush of despair exploded around her, tossing her from side to side like a boat in a storm. The shadows howled, rage and sorrow mingling. The walls of the cafe began to crack, broken memories spilling out like fragments of ice on water, each holding within them everything she ever feared, lost, or felt guilty about. "Face them, Claire!" the barista hissed, now lurking at the edges of perception, her face a mask of sinister delight. "Face yourself!" The ground beneath her trembled, and as she staggered, visions flooded her mind, lonely nights, haunting regrets, and loved ones whose faces were lost to time. They all clawed at her consciousness, demanding acknowledgement. The urge to crumble beneath the weight was overwhelming. Sweat slicked her brow and chills rippled across her skin. But she held tight to her brother's memory, the warmth radiating through her thoughts. "Stand strong," he echoed. Suddenly, the LGBTQ+ community of the cafe emerged from the depths, standing tall against the encroaching dark. Their eyes blazed with fierce loyalty, guiding her. With them, she was not alone. Together, they confronted the darkness. "We all have shadows," one of them declared, "but they do not define who we are." In that moment, something splintered. The figure's clarity flickered as if caught in a tempest. For a heartbeat, Claire saw its raw, pulsing core: fear, sadness, the weight of abandoned dreams. "Why do you hide?" The figure flickered, its tone shifting. "What do you fear?" Claire hesitated, knowing that what she saw in the figure mirrored her own insecurities. "You are not my truth," she stated firmly, pressing forward. "No more. You have no power over me." As her words reverberated through the chaos, the darkness recoiled, howling in fury. But in that moment of vulnerability, Claire felt the air shift. Possibilities opened, her light glimmering brighter and unyielding, melding into the collective courage of those around her. But just as that warmth began to suffocate the shadows, a crack echoed. The cafe walls creaked ominously, and those once safe memories flickered away, the strength of their hope wavered. The shadows, pulsing with a new fury, reformed violently, threatening to consume them all. "Face the inevitable. It's too late," the barista screamed through the growing cracks. "What happens when the light fades?" Claire thought, dread curling around her heart. With urgency clawing at her, she realized the fight wasn't over. A new wave of darkness brewed swiftly, and this time it sought not just to trap her but to annihilate everything she was. As she found herself teetering on the brink, Claire understood this was not just a battle for her soul, but possibly for everyone else. The clock's ominous tick echoed louder, the judgment hour growing near. What would be left behind when the final shadow fell? The air crackled with an electric tension. Claire felt the ground shake beneath her feet, almost as if the cafe itself was alive, breathing in sync with the dark force that loomed larger than ever. Panic gripped her throat, and for a moment she couldn't think. The memories that had danced just out of reach now loomed, grotesque and twisted. She could feel the taint of loss and regret wrapping around her heart, threatening to suffocate her. "Stronger together," someone murmured next to her. A hand squeezed her shoulder, grounding her momentarily. She turned to see one of her friends from the community, face set with determination amidst the chaos. "Hold on to me," they said, eyes flickering with flames of hope. "We can't let this consume us." Nodding, Claire tried to focus on this alliance, this insistence of community, but shadows roared around them. The figure at the center of that void stretched, its many eyes glistening like shards of glass, each reflecting a fractured version of her, fearful, broken, scared to confront the truth. "You think they can save you?" it taunted, laughter echoing like thunder. "They will abandon you, just like everyone else." "No!" Claire shouted, pushing against that onslaught. Her heart raced, blood pounding in her ears. "They are my family!" But the barista's face morphed again, the sinister grin morphing into something deeper, darker. "How can you trust them? They can't even save themselves. Look around, Claire. They are terrified." Claire hesitated. Were they on the brink of giving in? The shadows thrived on her anxiety, expanding like ripples in a pond, pushing everyone back, isolating her. As she fought to regain her momentum, she noticed the cafe walls shifting and flaking away. Bright colors melted into grotesque shapes, conversations warping into agonized cries. The light began to dim, casting a suffocating gloom over the once comforting gathering place. "No!" she screamed, the sound tearing from her throat like a battle cry. The darkness howled in response, and she felt a momentary surge of strength. Her connection to her friends pulsed like a heartbeat, alive and fierce. They were with her, anchoring her to resist the gravity of despair. "Together!" Claire urged. "We fight. Together." The shadows hesitated, flickers of uncertainty rippling through their form. It was a pause, an opening. Claire seized it, channeling her light towards her friends. Think of a time when hope bloomed. A soft warmth spread through her chest as she recalled times of laughter, joy, and solidarity. She spoke of love and pride, a mantra against the tide of darkness. With every shared memory, the figures around her glowed brighter. "We are not nothing!" another voice shouted, joining in the chorus of strength. And in that collective voice, Claire felt the shadows recoil, pulling back like a tide, revealing the softer hues of their shared experiences. But just as they began to push back, tendrils of darkness snatched at their ankles, murky fingers pulling at their resolve. Claire's voice faltered under the sheer weight of fear that shrieked from the figure. "It's never-ending. You'll always be trapped in this cycle." The cafe trembled uncontrollably, shards of glass and memories crashing around them, filling the space as footsteps of doubt echoed louder. Claire's pulse quickened, her heart in her throat, teetering between bravery and despair. Suddenly, a resounding crack split through the air. The floor beneath their feet splintered into black, hellish voids. "Claire!" a voice screamed. The pull of the shadows tugged at the fabric of their reality, and the laughter transformed into a horrifying chime. The shadows roared louder, desperate to escape, desperate to swallow everything whole. With one collective breath, Claire and her friends fell into the abyss, leaving behind whatever light they thought they had left. Sinking into the darkness, a question danced in Claire's mind: was the fight worth it? Would hope emerge once more, or was it just another facade, waiting to crack and crumble? Far below, in the depths of despair, a chilling whisper echoed. Welcome back, Claire. Would she find the strength to rise again? The darkness enveloped Claire and her friends, pulling them into an abyss that felt infinite. The cold seeped into her bones, numbing her thoughts as the shadows whispered their insidious promises. Despite the overwhelming dread, a spark flickered within her, tenuous yet fiercely alive. "Hold on!" she shouted into the void, reaching for the warmth of her friends. Suddenly, the stillness shattered with a jarring explosion of memories, laughter, love, moments shared in both jubilance and sorrow. They pressed against her heart, a potent reminder of what truly mattered. Together! Claire's voice rang out, echoing with an unwavering determination that ignited hope in the hearts of those around her. It was the rallying cry they needed, a promise that even in the depths of despair, they were not alone. They formed a circle, hands locked together, holding on to that vital connection that spiraled outward, pushing against the encroaching shadows. Light blossomed from their collective strength, illuminating the dark tendrils that sought to tear them apart. The ground trembled beneath them as the shadows recoiled in palpable fear. "You think this will save you?" The taunting voice of the figure echoed back, but this time there was uncertainty. "You've only delayed the inevitable." "Not today!" Claire screamed defiantly, her very essence radiating with unyielding resilience. The shadows screeched as the light surged forth, consuming the darkness. Each flicker danced with the struggles of their pain, forging a brilliant tapestry of hope that blazed brighter with every heartbeat. The cafe's interior began to transform. Fractured walls melted into vibrant colors as memories of joy flooded the space, the festively lit corners bursting into life once more. Light poured into every crevice, chasing away the dark. Suddenly, a surge of energy crackled through the air. Claire felt her brother's presence wrap around her like a warm embrace. "Don't give up! You are stronger than this!" With renewed vigor, Claire tore through the darkness with her lights. "We will not be defined by fear," she bellowed, lifting her chin defiantly as they pushed forward. The shadows, shrieking in outrage, twisted and surged like a storm, but the warmth spilled forth, flickering brightly like stars against the night sky. Together, the group channeled memories of every triumph, every bond that made them who they were. They were neither alone nor powerless against this darkness. "Regrets and fears bind me no more," Claire yelled, feeling truth resonate deeply within her. "For every shadow that rises, we will rise stronger." With that declaration, an astonishing wave of light exploded outward, engulfing everything in its path. The shadows screeched, bright light swallowing them whole, imploding the very darkness that had claimed them. As the ceiling billowed and cracked, the cafe erupted into blinding brilliance, and Claire could hardly believe her eyes. Instead of an abyss, there was the colorful, warm atmosphere of the cafe, the smell of fresh coffee wafting in the air, mingled with laughter and busy conversations. "Claire!" her friends called, breaking the momentary silence as reality settled around them. The weight of the shadows had lifted, and they stood, bewildered yet unharmed. The barista was nowhere to be found, evaporated like mist in the sunlight. In the aftermath, Claire felt a familiar warmth spread through her, washing away the chill that had gripped her heart. "We did it!" she exclaimed, her eyes brimming with tears of relief. "We're free!" Around her, familiar faces beamed back, joyous and vibrant. The cafe buzzed non-stop, filled with life and warmth. As Claire sipped her caramel macchiato, she felt the permanence of her choices solidifying, a promise that the shadows would never claim her spirit again. The community that helped her rise now served as a reminder of everything she had endured. That evening, as she left the cafe, she glanced back, a smile crossing her lips. The Maplewood Starbucks stood strong and inviting as ever, a beacon of resilience and hope. "Claire!" A familiar voice called, and she turned to find her brother approaching, his presence like a safe harbor in the swirl of foreign emotions. "You're back!" "Yeah," she replied, wiping away tears of joy. "And stronger than ever." As they walked away from the cafe together, they left behind echoes of the past, embracing what awaited them, a future brimming with possibility, free from the weight of shadows. If you loved this thrilling conclusion, you need to subscribe now. Don't let these stories slip away. Smash that like button to fire up the algorithm. Your reactions and theories in the comments are what we crave, so flood the section below. And this is the moment to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how it all ends. Don't wait even one more second. Support your channel now.